Perfect. Hello, Congresswoman Chu and fellow staff. My name is Justin Liao, the CEO of Civikids, a student-run organization that strives to empower the immigrant youth of our society through workshops, publications, and the media, and also, most of all, meeting with political figures like yourself to achieve perspectives through the mind of a modern-day politician. We're honored to have you here today to showcase the burdens and strength that it takes to be a politician, let alone a representative of our democratic processes. Representing the organization today, we have my partner, Wendy Chang, Ada Wang, Dylan Kim, and myself. And now with our first question by Wendy.
Hello. So the first question is there anything about daily life as a government official, either difficulty or added benefit that you didn't realize about coming into office? And did this increase during the impeachment trial for former President Trump or other debates regarding gun control policies?
Well, I knew that this would require travel, but I do have a pretty rough schedule, I would say, which is I fly twice a week to and from Washington, D.C., from LAX to Washington, D.C., and I do that 2 weeks out of every month. So I'm either always coming or going to Washington, D.C. And with the 3-hour difference, it does require lots and lots of adjustment in different time zones. So that it takes some getting used to. And I have worked hard to try to make this kind of a normal life, but well, it isn't quite a normal life. So so yeah, that is something that is a little difficult to deal with. And I would say, as far as impeachment and gun control policies, of course, I am for both. And the thing that has bothered me is why impeachment hasn't happened and why we can't protect all the people of America through very logical and safe gun control policies. So I have worked very hard, especially on the gun safety policies, and I'm very proud that actually it was just last Friday that we passed the assault weapons ban after it was allowed to lapse. We passed it out of the House, and I'm very proud of that vote.
Perfect. Having grown up in Los Angeles, how has the political scene shifted or changed since your adolescence? And what aspect inspired you specifically to pursue a career as a politician?
Well, when I started out, there were very, very few Asian Americans in elected office. And in fact, I never thought that I would be in elected office because I hardly saw anyone like me being in this kind of position. So I went to the university as a math major thinking I would be in a computer scientist type of field. But in my freshman year, I was walking across a quad when somebody handed me a flyer for what was then an experimental class in Asian American Studies. I decided to take it. And what I learned made a light go off in my head. I learned about the discriminatory actions taken by our federal government. I switched my major and pursued clinical psychology, and in fact got a PhD at the California School of Professional Psychology in Los Angeles. And by switching, I thought I would be in a better position to help people. But ultimately, my decision to run for office came when an ugly anti-immigrant English-only movement occurred in the city I was living in, which is Monterey Park. A vocal group of longtime residents resented the new immigrants that were moving in and wanted English only for the signs in the city and only English books in the library. The last straw was when they got a resolution in the city council saying that only English be spoken in the city. Well, when they passed that resolution, many of us said, enough is enough. I joined a multi-ethnic coalition to fight this resolution and help lead an effort to get thousands of signatures on petitions, and we succeeded in getting the resolution overturned. But it became so apparent that the city council did not represent the population of the city. So I ran for city council and won. I served there for 13 years and was mayor 3 times. I won then my state seat in the state assembly and then a seat in the state board of equalization, California's elected tax board. And then in 2009, the congressional seat opened up. I ran for it and won, but what I'll never forget is when the next day occurred and President Obama called me from the White House to congratulate me on becoming the first Chinese American woman elected to Congress in history.
That is a really impressive and like respectful story that you had. The next question is about like more about politics. So senators like Joe mentioned have recently made initiatives and legislation you sponsor quite difficult to be put through. So do you believe that modern day politics is mainly a conversation of weighing Republicans versus Democrats rather than focusing on a utilitarian action?
Well, actually, funny you should talk about Joe Manchin, because he recently did a turnaround, and he said that he'd been negotiating the whole time, but we thought that he had doomed our Build Back Better bill, which is what's called reconciliation bill. There are certain bills that you can pass with a majority vote, 50 votes plus one. The problem with the Senate is that they have this filibuster rule which requires 60 votes, which means that the 10 people above the 50 are a minority that control everything. That's why so much has been stuck in the Senate. And as you may know, I am the lead in fighting for abortion rights. I am the lead sponsor of the Women's Health Protection Act, which would Roe versus Wade, the law of the land. And it is because of the filibuster that this bill cannot succeed right now. So it is that which is holding up progress in so many ways, on voting rights legislation, on abortion rights, on climate change legislation, on gun safety policy. That is what I think is the enemy, actually, the filibuster. And so I am for eliminating the filibuster. And if so, we can get many of these things through, including my abortion rights bill. So funny you mentioned, though, Joe Manchin, because he did a big turnaround in the last few days. And that is, he said that he was for a reconciliation bill, a bill that could pass with only a majority vote of 50 plus one. And it actually has some very good provisions in it. It would lower the price of prescription drugs. It would extend our subsidies for the Affordable Care Act so people can afford health insurance. And the most exciting thing is that it has very good provisions for climate change. And it would actually provide the biggest boost to fighting climate change ever in our history. So I would say, you never know. Sometimes people seem like they don't want to move ahead, but Joe Manchin can surprise you and others can surprise you. So therefore, lesson here, keep the dialogue up.
Ma'am, I'd like to say it's an honor to have you with us today. And for our fourth question, do you feel that the complexity of voter registration for immigrants and the requirement for voter ID is constitutional or a form of voter suppression?
Definitely, these are forms of voter suppression. And in fact, you notice that those states which are passing these kinds of voter ID laws or laws suppressing the ability to have ballot boxes or early voting, those are the Republican states that do not want to have immigrants and people of color vote. And yet we know that if you have forms in voting laws, such as ones which guarantee same-day voting, same-day registration, early voting, no excuse voting, and ones that stop these voter ID laws, that helps our democracy, that helps people like our immigrants to vote. And so that's what we need to do. By the way, we have these bills. These are exactly the bills that are stuck in the Senate because of that terrible filibuster rule I was talking about. But we actually passed a few bills over there, the For the People Act, HR 1, and also the Freedom to Vote Act. And if we eliminate the filibuster, we can get it through the Senate and then signed into law.
And the next question is about your stance on pro-choice. So your arrest during the pro-choice protest in Washington, D.C. recently made headlines. Do you believe that this was an infringement on your First Amendment rights? And what can you say to the youth who are afraid to just speak about their opinions and to protest peacefully?
Well, I tell you, I was arrested along with 181 other people who wanted to stand up for abortion rights. And actually, there were hundreds of people there marching, but 181 of us volunteered to get arrested. Civil disobedience is sometimes the only way you can get your voices heard. And it's something that got us voting rights. It got us civil rights legislation. There are numerous very key pieces of legislation that have happened because of civil disobedience. So that's why we did it. And I have to say that it was very inspirational because I was there being arrested with all these others who wanted to make their voices heard, who were willing to have this on their records, to make a statement about the importance of abortion rights as healthcare, the importance of women to have the freedom to make choices about their own bodies, about having a right that we've had for 50 years for women, and making sure that stays as our right. So actually, it was a way of raising our voices, not suppressing our voices.
Thank you. Something that you very much advocate for, the Women's Health Protection Act, is something that's meant to be a statute of rights to avoid humanitarian crises that we're experiencing currently in the status quo. So what's your overall message or opinion about the role that the Supreme Court had in recent rulings?
The Supreme Court has turned into an extremist far-right court, and they did it by packing the court with these very conservative justices who actually lied. I mean, actually, two of them, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, lied when they went through their confirmation process and said that they respected precedent. Well, if they actually respected precedent, they would not have overturned Roe versus Wade, which has been the law of the land for 50 years. And so they are not stopping there, that I know. The Women's Health Protection Act, which upheld the right to an abortion, was based on the 14th Amendment. And already Clarence Thomas said that all the decisions that they've made subsequent to them that were based on the 14th Amendment are things that should be overturned, such as contraception, same-sex marriage, the ability to have gay relationships, and even interracial marriage. So the Supreme Court has become more and more extremist, and that is taking us very much backwards in this country. And that's why we have to eliminate the filibuster, I tell you, because one way to combat what the Supreme Court is doing is by passing legislation like my Women's Health Protection Act, which would indeed go against that Supreme Court ruling by making Roe versus Wade the law of the land.
Thank you very much. So for our next question, how are death threats received in your line of work? Are they affirmations that you're moving in the right direction? How do you proceed?
Well, I would say that the biggest death threat I had was during January 6th, because I was there in the Capitol when all those rioters invaded. I was in my office and I was ready to come down to vote on certifying Arizona for the presidential election, when I saw on the monitors that the rioters had come in with their clubs, their bullies. I didn't know they had guns and things like that, but apparently they did. And I saw that they were headed straight to the Senate floor and then to the House floor. Thank goodness in the Senate, the senators were evacuated before they got in there. But on the House floor, I tell you, if the Capitol Police had not stopped them, they would have gone into the House floor. And there were some members of the House that were still there, and I'm certain they would have killed them. And I'm certain that if they had found me, they would have caught me. But what I did was I stayed in my office. I locked the doors. I didn't open the doors for anybody. I turned down the TV so they couldn't hear I was there. And I didn't come out for 8 hours. So that was very, very scary, I must say.
Well, I'm sure we're all glad that in the end that most people are safe. Thank you for sharing that. And our last question is, in 2009, you co-sponsored the Comprehensive Immigration Reform Bill. Do you think our immigration policy have been altered enough to solve immigration crisis in our southern borders?
So our immigration system is now more broken than ever. And I am one who speaks out a lot on this. But what happened was that during the Trump era, President Trump invoked this thing called Title 42, which said that we should not allow anybody across our borders to even claim asylum because of COVID-19. Even the CDC has said that this is not accurate, that having people cross the borders does not bring COVID-19. And actually, the law is that anybody can come across the border to claim asylum if there is a threat to their life, if they can demonstrate that. And so all these people have been stopped up. They cannot claim asylum. And I think that is terrible. So I'm calling for an end to Title 42. And also that what I'm saying is that people should be able to claim asylum at the southern border. And I also feel that those who are in this country and have been for a long, long time should have a way to gain a pathway to citizenship, because right now they live a shadow life and some of them have been there 2 or 3 decades.
Congresswoman, thank you so much. That's all that we have today. Would you mind if we have a screenshot type photo with you?
Of course.
Perfect.
All right, great. Everyone on 3, 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Perfect.
thanks.
Thank you for your time. Also,
Okay.
please thank your staff for us for helping facilitate this interview. And we wish you best of luck.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.